Hello and welcome to the HTML5 lecture series at Snhu. I'm Tom Adamson, visiting professor. This is lecture 13 on JavaScript Introduction. Now, referring to my really cool academic notes, and notice no glasses, no sunglasses today. I'm going to leave them down here. Okay. I'm waiting for some comments on the sunglasses and see how we do with that. All right, so far what we've talked about in our lecture series in terms of documents, we've talked about two documents. One of the documents we talked about was a web document. And this contained the HTML code. And of course, this was pure text. That was one that we talked about. And these documents had the extension .html. Okay, that was their extension. The other kind we finished talking about on the last lecture was a CSS document. And that contains style code. And this was pure text. In other words, both these could be done in a simple text editor. And this had the extension .css. And of course, these are the file extensions. For these text documents. They have meaning when it comes to the browser. So these are the two documents that we've talked about so far. What we're going to do now is I'm going to talk about a third document that's going to be, guess what? A JavaScript document. And guess what? What about the JavaScript document? It's going to be pure text. It's going to have a different extension. And the extension, as we will see, will be .js. Okay. With that in mind now, let's introduce the other document. So we already have a background and a foundation for using text documents to do some really cool stuff for us, depending on how we make their extensions. And we're using Notepad to make them all. So what we're going to be doing is introducing another document. And of course, this is somebody that's holding a sign, and like this. Here's the thumb, and there's their fingers. There's a hand coming out here somewhere. Okay. Another document, and the document is a JavaScript document. And the JavaScript document has programming code. And the extension for it is .js, and this is pure text. It can be written in a simple text editor. So this is the third document that we're introducing in this lecture, which is a JavaScript document which contains programming code, and it has the extension JS. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of our overall browser? Well, here's what it means. I'll show you what it means here. Let's get rid of this here. Let's take, for example, here's our browser on our client. This is our browser. Here's the resulting web page that the client sees. And here's the client looking at it. Okay. And what's coming in now are actually 3 documents, and here's the cloud. Where now we get our web document, which is, this is our web document. Which is .html. That goes to the browser. We also get our style document, which has .css as the extension. That goes to the browser. And now we have a third one coming from the cloud. Could be the same server, but it doesn't have to be. And this is going to be our programming document. And this has the extension .js. So all 3 of these documents now can interact inside the web browser and presenting one single web page to the end user. And here's the end user. By the way, the cloud here, all of these don't have to come from the same server. And we'll see many times a lot of these programming documents will come from different servers in different parts of the world. And we'll call them from our web document. Okay? So that's the concept on that one. Let me put this over here. And then the next thing we're going to go on to is a good question. With all this in mind, what does JavaScript do? And that might be a good question. And that's what somebody might ask right here. This is a person that generally asks questions, and of course they have their shoulders scrunched up and they got their hands open like so, because they're asking a question. So what does JavaScript do? Well, JavaScript is a programming language. What it can do is that it can make games that work through the browser. It can do animation. It can do interactive graphics. It can work on the client as well as the server. In other words, JavaScript can work in the cloud as well as working on the client. It can do interactive graphics. It can do animation. It can make computer games. JavaScript is makes my web page dynamic, so I can interact with it. Okay. Now, here's an important thing about JavaScript. So we answer this guy's question. Some of the things that JavaScript does. An important point. Very, 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 very important. It's so important, I'm going to put this in red. JavaScript is not Java. JavaScript is not Java. Say this, repeat after me 3 times. JavaScript is not Java. JavaScript is not Java. JavaScript is not Java. No. These are 2 different programming languages. If you don't remember anything else from this lecture, remember at least this. JavaScript is not Java. JavaScript and Java are 2 entirely different programming languages. We're not going to be talking about Java. We're going to be talking about JavaScript. Okay, you might say, hey, I'm getting sick of you saying this, but it's very important that we let that sink in. Okay, so getting back to my academic notes here, since hopefully we've made that point. Let's get some more information about JavaScript. And we don't have to do that in red. As a matter of fact, we could probably do this part in blue. Let's see how blue's going to look. Okay, back to my big notes here. JavaScript can be written using any simple text editor. Nothing else is needed. You don't need to buy anything, you don't need to purchase anything to create a JavaScript document. You can use just a simple text editor, basically, which is free. Now, let's look about something about JavaScript. JavaScript is the world's, and let's draw a picture of the world. This is the world right here. And then, of course, up here we have, here's where we live, here's Florida, here Mexico, South America comes down here, here's up here, blah, 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 here's the North Pole, here's the ocean here, here's Great Britain over here, here's the rest of Europe comes down here, Mediterranean, there's Italy, the Middle East comes around here, there's Gibraltar, and here's Africa around here, comes down this way, then it goes up here. JavaScript is the world's most popular programming language. JavaScript, for example, is used in Miami, Florida. JavaScript is used up here at SNHU. JavaScript is used in Great Britain. JavaScript is used in Ireland. JavaScript is used on a boat that's going across the Atlantic. JavaScript is used in Egypt. JavaScript is used in Italy. JavaScript is used in France. JavaScript is used here in South Africa. JavaScript is used in Madagascar. JavaScript is used all over the place for all kinds of applications. I'm not talking Java, I'm talking JavaScript. It's the world's most popular programming language, used in more applications than any other single programming language. Now, let's look at this and see where it's used. And why should I bother about JavaScript? Well, we'll see. If we're going to learn any language at all, learn this one. JavaScript is the programming language for HTML5. JavaScript is the backbone of HTML5. It's also the programming language for web servers. It's the programming language for PCs. It's the programming language for laptops. It's the programming language for tablets. It's a programming language for smartphones. It's a programming language for appliances, like refrigerators, TV sets, microwave ovens. It's a programming language for now and the future. JavaScript is even used for operating systems. JavaScript, there's hardly an application that you can think of that JavaScript can't do. Okay, let's have an example of what JavaScript can do, and for that I'm going to need to have the camera here on the screen, please. I'm going to give some examples here of what JavaScript can do, and go up on the screen here. These examples come from W3 Schools, the examples that I'm going to be showing you here. What I've got here is, I'm going to start from over here. This is my first JavaScript. JavaScript can react to events like the click of a button. I'm going to click the button, and bang, now this thing pops up and it says welcome. So when I clicked on the button, it made a little pop-up thing that said welcome. This is what the code looks like over here on the left. Don't worry about the code for right now. I just want you to see what JavaScript can do. Here's another one. JavaScript can change the content of an HTML element. I'm going to click on the button, and it did. It says hello JavaScript. So I saw that my web page went from this, and just by clicking on the button, it now goes to this. So JavaScript can change web page content. JavaScript can also change the style. Like here, we have a paragraph which is in black, and if I click on this, it's now in red. And again, this is the web page, this is the web document. Don't worry about the code for now. Here's another one. JavaScript can check and see if I inputted a number. Let me put a number in here, 8976, and then click it to send a number somewhere, and everything works fine. But now let me put in say SNHU, and then click on this to send it. And it says not numeric. So it can look at my input forms and what have you. So JavaScript can do a lot of really, really cool stuff. Let me see, there was something else here I wanted to show with JavaScript here. Here's an introduction, and there was one, the light bulb, for example. I'm going to click on the light bulb, and when I do, the light bulb goes on. When I click on it again, the light bulb goes off. So here's interactive graphics using JavaScript. Okay. And that stuff was taken from the site whoops, let me get another pen here. w3schools.com, which is a good resource for a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, w3schools.com. So the stuff that you saw up on the screen, that's where it came from. Okay. Okay, getting back to my notes. I've got a person here, and he's a concern type. Let's say he's got some glasses on, and he's going to be asking a question. He says, I know where you can put CSS stuff. Remember, for CSS, cascading style sheets, we could put them in a separate document, or we could include them in the web document itself, or we could use it as an inline style. Like, for example, you could use a separate CSS.css file, right? Remember that? Or you could have within the web document. Remember, we could have CSS code within the web document itself, or it could be an inline attribute. The style could be. There's my inline attribute. So he knows all that. So he's going to say here, but what he doesn't know, where can you put JavaScript? Which is a good question. So he knows where you can put the CSS stuff just like we do. He knows you can put it as a separate CSS file. He knows that you can put it within the web document. He also knows that you can use it as an inline attribute. But where can you put JavaScript? Okay, let's see where we can and see how it relates to where we can put the CSS stuff. What I'm going to do is I want to look at the screen here now, please. And I want to make sure I'm just going to minimize this guy here. And what I've got here now, I've got, let me enlarge this. I have several different web documents. I got one is example. And let me just look at the first example. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to open it with my favorite editor, which is Notepad. When I open it, what I see here, I'm just going to walk over to the screen. We'll stay on the screen here. what I see here is standard stuff. There's my HTML element, which is the root element. There's my head element from here to here. There's my title element. Now what's new is I have a script element with a system resource connection called myscript.js. This should look a little bit familiar because this is like how we got a separate CSS file. But now we're going to have a separate JavaScript file that we're going to get to include in this web document. And what this says right here is welcome to my JavaScript example. What's new to us here is a new element called button. This is the opening tag. This is the closing tag. This is the content. This is what will appear on the button. And here we have an attribute, which is name value pairs. And what it says on click, do it. And we say, what is do it? Well, what we need to find out is we need to go into the file called myscript.js and see what do it is. This, of course, was written in Notepad, just standard text. Stay on the screen, please. And I'll come over here while we're staying on the screen, and I'm going to open myscript.js. Okay, and let me just get this here. Coming back to the screen here, what I see here, this is myscript.js, which is this. Okay, myscript.js written in Notepad. I have a function called doit. You might say, a function, what's that? A function is simply a holding place for code. That's all it is. It's no big deal. And it uses these squiggly things right here. This is the command. This is alert is the built-in command that JavaScript knows. And it's alert. And when I call this function doit, it's going to give me a pop-up window that says, from the JavaScript file, mystuff.js. So what this shows is that I can have a separate web document written in plain text that is called and used by my web page. And let's see what happens when I actually try it. Stay on the screen, and we'll see what happens. So I'm simply going to close this guy here. I'm going to close this guy here. I'm going to click on this. Welcome to my JavaScript example. There's the button that says click me. I'm going to click on the button, and a pop-up screen, you might have to zoom in with the camera to see it because I can't make this any bigger. The pop-up screen says, from the JavaScript file, mystuff.js. So this is working similar to how our cascading style sheets worked when we had a separate web page. I'm just going to click on the OK button, come back here and minimize this. And now I'm going to go back to my notes and see where I should be next. Okay, back here on the board, just as a quick review, because this is important. What we have is an HTML document. This is the one I called my JavaScript file, okay? It had the extension .html. This is my JavaScript document. That's the one that gave me a little pop-up window. This has the extension .js. We know that. And in the previous lecture, we used a style document. Which could be called from the HTML document, just like this. And it was .css. What's important here is that all of these are simple text documents. Right, so wait a minute, Amson, you've told me this about 100 times. That's right, because I don't want you to think that you have to buy anything, that you have to go and buy any kind of proprietary software at all to use all of the features of these. All of the features of these. Everything that you use here is absolutely free. You don't have to buy anything from any company at any time for any reason. That's what's important. So what this means is that here's the browser, here's the web page, here's the browser, this is the web page, and here comes these documents here. This is my .html, this is my .css, this is my .js, all coming from the cloud. All of these are free. I don't have to pay 1 penny to do it. I don't have to pay any royalties on it. The browser is free. You can install a browser, it doesn't cost you 1 penny. I can create all of these to make an application that will give me money, which I can keep. That's how it works. That's how simple it is. I don't have to pay 1 penny for any of these. I don't have to pay any royalties on them or anything like that. And the browser, hey, that becomes the platform. So, let's see what I have here. I'm going to show you now where else JavaScript can run. And for that, I'm going to go back to the screen here. Go back to the screen, please. So the first example, just to take a quick review, I'm going to open with Notepad. And in this example, what it did is that it treated JavaScript as a separate file right here. Okay? All right, that was that example. Let's now look at the next example, this one right here. I'm going to open with my favorite editor again, Notepad. In this example, now the script is part of the HTML document right here. You see the script element here? The function that was put in the other document on this example, that function is now part of the web document, part of the HTML code. Sort of just like we did with cascading style sheets. So if I do this, the same thing will happen. Notice I have the same code here. Button, on click, do it. And what's do it? Do it is the name of this function. So if I come here, this one's going to look just like the first one. Okay, click me, comes up and it says from the JavaScript head element. Okay, all right, so I don't want to close this down completely. I want to do this. Let's look at the third example. What I'm going to do here now is I'm going to open this with Notepad, my favorite editor. On this one here, in the body element, I now have I put a script element within the body. And this right here, there's no function, it just says alert from the JavaScript command in the body. What's going to happen now is that this will be executed as soon as the body of the page loads. So what I had here is the first example where this is where it was external from the web document right here. This is where the script was put up in the head element as a function, okay, so that I could call it from a click on a button. This one here is put right in the body, and I don't need a button because as soon as it loads, I'll get it. So let's try it. See, from the JavaScript command in the body. So this makes for what we call immediate execution. So I see now that what I can do with JavaScript, and where do I put it? Coming back to the board here, I can put one JavaScript in a separate file, or I can put JavaScript in the head element, or I can put JavaScript in the body element. So just like with CSS, I had 3 choices as to where I could put styling information. With JavaScript, I have 3 choices where I can put programming information for the script. Okay, now, back on the board here. What is so cool about JavaScript is I can have, here's the cloud. Here's the server on the cloud. And then here I've got this going out to different clients. Here's a client right here. He's using my program. He's all happy. Here's another client using this. She's all happy because she really likes the way I did my HTML5. Here's another client right here coming from the same server, interacting with the server, playing the game, using HTML5. This dude's all happy. And then what I can do, I know right now that JavaScript runs on the client. However, I can also have JavaScript run on the server. And what I can do with this, coming over here on the board, on this side of the board here, is that I can use JavaScript as a helper program. What a helper program is someone's already coded something in JavaScript that I can use for free. And one of the things that's been coded in JavaScript that I can use for free is called Node.js. Node.js has a lot of programming code, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it on the screen here, what it means. So if we could go to the screen and look at Node.js. I think I have it up here somewhere. Yes, here it is. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is stay on the screen here. And if you can zoom in to see this, Node.js is a server-side software system designed for writing scalable internet application, notably web servers. Programs are written on the server side in JavaScript and so on. Node.js contains a built-in HTTP server library, making it possible to run a web server without the use of external software such as Apache or really anything else. And allowing more control of how the web server works, Node.js enables web developers to create an entire web application in JavaScript, both server-side and client-side. Now, how much does Node.js cost? I'm just going to stay on the screen here. I'm just going to scroll down so we can see how much it costs. We see right here that the stable release was done in May 24th, 2013, which wasn't that long ago, so we're pretty current. And the license is an MIT license. The MIT license basically means that you can use Node.js for any application that you want, for any purpose that you want, for totally free. The only thing you cannot do, you cannot take Node.js and try and sell it to somebody. So again, and what's Node.js written in? Guess what? Using just simple plain text. Okay, I'm going to go back to my notes here and see what I hear. So the point of this is, we get back on the board, what's important here in HTML5 is you only need to know one programming language for everything. And that programming language is JavaScript. Don't waste your time with anything else. JavaScript is free. It's a standard. It has all kinds of helper functions. Node.js is just one out of 100 of different helper functions. So staying on the screen now, what I'd like to do, if I haven't messed this up yet, I'd like to show you, here's an example. There's an example of what you can do with a JavaScript helper function. Three-dimensional stuff. Here's some more examples. Here's gauges for, by the way, all of these gauges, none of them are GIFs. None of them are standard images. They're all created by JavaScript. So look, I can make them move around here. Okay, I can do this with them. I can do the same thing here with this one. Make it move around like that. I can come down here, make this one move. Or I can make it move by code. I can even change the style of the gauges using style sheets. I can make this one move. Here's another example I have. Oh, that one I already did with the stuff here. So let's get back on the board here, please. So hopefully this was a meaningful and an informative introduction to JavaScript. We're going to be talking a lot more about JavaScript and the power of JavaScript in future lectures. And that's it for this lecture. Thank you for attending.